for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello everyone, welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is going to be Timothy Ward, and we're going to be talking about his book, What the Buddha Never Taught, which should be a very entertaining book, and I hope everybody enjoys this. I think they will. Wanted to let everybody know if you want to learn more about them, you could go to www.timwardsbooks.com, and if y'all have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat room, or to call in at 832-632-7904. Don't forget to always invite your friends. Don't forget that Talk Now Radio is listener supported. It helps keep the sponsors out and keep the information flowing freely without anybody trying to say you can put this on or that on or I'm going to cut out your money on you and you ain't going to be able to broadcast, in other words. So if you get a chance to hit that donation meter, you keep me able to broadcast everything that anybody else might not want me to broadcast, in other words. So Tim, how you doing tonight?
Hey Royce, I'm fine. I'm so happy to be a guest on your show. This is my first time, and hello to your audience. And I'm so glad to meet you and all your great listeners.
Yeah, this is the first time we met, and I've been doing my show for 7 years, and I'm still meeting new people.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you, it's been a pleasure to meet you. You're a very unique person. You're got a very bright, cheerful outlook on life. I've noticed it in your emails and noticed it when I was talking to you before the show went live.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm, I look around and I feel blessed every day to be alive. What can I say?
Okay. Well, that it really shows in the way you carry yourself, the things you say, and, your general cheerful personality. But why don't we real quick, to start things out, let everybody know a little something about yourself, what got you interested in writing about this topic you're writing about in this book?
Well, when I was a young man, that was a long time ago now, when I was a young man, I was really just plain curious about what life was like for other people. So, I grew up in a Christian household. I went to university. I studied a lot of different things. But when I finished university, I really wanted to know, well, what does most of the world think like? And this led me to take a trip to Asia. And as part of this trip to Asia, I ended up in Thailand. And in Thailand, one of the things I really wanted to do was understand what it was like to be a Buddhist, right? What a great opportunity to really try to think about what it's like to be from a completely different religion when you're in another country. And I'd heard that there was this place, this special temple set up in a jungle in the northeast corner of Thailand, where foreigners could actually go and they could be integrated into a functioning Buddhist monastery. And the Thai master who set this place up had a lot of Westerners come to him, and so he set it up so that Westerners could easily live like Thai Buddhist monks, but without having to spend the years and years of studying the Thai language, which is very difficult, which other people had to do. So I went to this place, and about half the monks were Westerners. Most of them monks, some of them sort of younger apprentice monks, and half of them were Thais who, were practicing their own native religion. So this was, to me, just an incredible opportunity to literally walk inside the robes of a completely other way of looking at life. And that's what this book, What the Buddha Never Taught, is about. It starts with the day I walked into this monastery, and it ends with the day I walked out of this monastery.
Okay. So I noticed in your book description that it talked about what to do when you find a snake in the outhouse. Would that be in there because you actually were the person who encountered this snake in the outhouse?
Well, actually, personally, the snake in the outhouse was not me, but I knew the guy it happened to. And so imagine this. We're living in a jungle in Thailand, and cobras live in that jungle. And one of the monks one day went to the bathroom, and these are like Asian-style toilets, so he's he went in the middle of the night with his flashlight, closed the door, squatted down, and as he squatted down, his flashlight hit a cobra coiled behind the door, which reared up, literally looking him face to face at that moment. Now, at that moment, if you were looking face to face with a cobra about less than 2 feet away from each other, and you know that thing could kill you if it strikes you, I tell you, squatting down in that house is the best position to be in.
That's what I was thinking.
But this guy who'd been practicing for like 5 years, he's actually from Germany. Because he'd been so grounded in this Buddhist sense of being present and feeling nonviolence, he was able to just become, instead of panic, instead of trying to fight or strike out at it, he just got completely relaxed, completely cool. And he said he just, radiated feelings of well-being and non-harm towards the snake that's literally looking him straight in the face. And the snake relaxed. The snake realized he wasn't going to hurt him. And when the snake relaxed, he very slowly stood up, very slowly reached for the door, and very slowly walked out safely. Now, that to me was a remarkable story, and it sounded just incredible. But I tell you, when I was there, one day I was walking through one of these jungle paths with an armload of laundry, and there, right in the path in front of me, I saw a cobra. Like we're talking 6 feet away. And when I stumbled upon it, it reared up in my direction. And now, for anybody who doesn't know, a cobra can actually slither faster than a man can run. So I knew that if that snake wanted to strike me, there was no way I was going to stop it. But I remembered the story of this German monk whose name was Ruck. I remembered that. I remembered what we were taught. What we're taught is to just get really relaxed and really just breathe nonviolent compassion towards everything. So I did that. I had the presence of mind to do that. I just breathed, relaxed, looked at the snake, and the snake got it. And just, Royce, I can't tell you how remarkable it is. The snake got it, that I meant it no harm. And you can see in a cobra, because when it gets that, it relaxes its hood. Its hood is a threatening gesture. It means, watch out, I can kill you, baby. So relax its
most
hood.
cobras strike out of fear.
Yeah, exactly. So when it gets it, and it gets it that you are not meaning to harm it, it just relaxed its hood, and it slowly, leisurely, you could even say, slithered off into the jungle. And I went walking along my way. But Royce, this is really a pivotal moment in my life, because I think we in North America, we live as if the wild things in nature are somehow out to get us, whether it's a cobra or a spider or a mosquito or a bear or a shark. Any wild thing is out to get us, and that's actually not true. What I discovered is they're just living their lives. If humans get attacked, it's mostly because they feel threatened, or they might mistake you for food. But we're not even really food for most creatures. And
Probably
I
too
realized
sour.
What's that?
We're probably too sour for most of them.
Yeah, I'm sure we're too sour. And we're like, oh, that tastes real chemically. There's too many additives in that thing. I don't want to touch it. But the point is, our whole attitude towards nature is one of fearful opposition. And I learned at this monastery that if I could let go of that, I could actually be safe. And I tell you, one of the rules at the monastery that when you enter there you agree to abide by is not thou shalt not kill, but you will refrain from harming any living thing. Any living thing. That includes snakes. It includes the scorpions that crawl around under the leaves. It includes the tarantulas that crawl around in the trees. It includes the poisonous giant centipedes. And it even includes mosquitoes. Royce, we were told, do not kill a mosquito while you're here. Imagine that.
That had to be awful hard and rigorous to live by.
Especially in the jungle in Thailand where there's lots of mosquitoes. And I have to say, I'm no saint. A lot of time I swatted mosquitoes, but sometimes I had the presence of mind to really try my best not to, if one landed on me, just to brush it away. If you start to see a mosquito as a living thing that's just driven by its own impulses, that changes things. I grew up in Canada, and in Canada, we have not only lots of mosquitoes, but big ones. And we sort of treat mosquitoes as the enemy, like as if it's trying to bite me to make me really irritated, and we get really angry at them. And so our whole day can be ruined because we're frustrated and we're angry and we're scratching and we're uncomfortable. And if you fight that psychologically, you can make yourself miserable. But if you see mosquitoes as just creatures that are trying to get a meal because that's what they need to live, then you can have a little bit of compassion towards them. Like I say, I was no saint. I still killed mosquitoes. But sometimes I was able to stop myself and remember every living thing is just doing its bit. It's just trying to get by. It's not out to get me.
Well, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on you.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm just out of curiosity if you guys were allowed to use repellent.
No, we didn't have any repellent there. Now, we did sleep under sleeping nets, under mosquito nets. Thank God, because otherwise I never would have gotten any sleep.
Yeah,
but we didn't use any repellents or anything unnatural at all.
Yeah, I was just thinking with the repellent, you don't kill them; they just they don't light.
Right, and absolutely. I mean, in the real world, yeah, using repellent is really the smart thing to do. But here, the thing is, and this is what the head monks really said explicitly: your mosquitoes can be your teachers, right? Because mosquitoes can show you how angry you are at the world. When something frustrates you or bites you and makes you itch a little bit, how our response is often to get really angry at that thing. So a mosquito can actually teach you. How silly is that?
I tell you what, they're right about that. I have an issue with June bugs every year about June. It seems like every moth, every June bug, every flying cockroach uses me for target practice.
But I mean, I'm sure I know you're not alone. My wife feels the same way. She has not a very good relationship with insects, and one of the things that I've taken back with me from the monastery years ago is really this understanding that even insects, they're just living their own short lives. And so Teresa, my beloved wife, will find a spider in her bedroom, and it's like, oh my God, there's a spider, just kill it, kill it, kill it, kill it. And I'll go in and I'll take a Kleenex or something, and I'll gently sort of grab it, and I'll take it to the front door, and I'll throw it outside, and she's like literally falling behind me going, just kill it, kill it, kill it, oh for God's sakes, kill it. And I'm like, why not just let it outside where it's going to live its own life? It doesn't want to be in the house with us anyway. It wants to be outside. Let me just let it go. And what I notice is that attitude, when I express it towards small and humble things like mosquitoes, helps me have an easier attitude towards other people and also towards myself. Because sometimes we feel the way we feel towards annoying bugs. We feel that way towards people too.
So if somebody's trying to master patience, then the monastery would be a perfect place.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's one of the things the monastery is really great at, is it teaches you how much of your impatience with others is just your difficulty in being with what's happening right now. We want to get on to other things. So if somebody's like talking too much at us, we want to get on to other things. We're not actually even present to that person and what they might want to be sharing with us, or what they might really need to hear from us. We just want to move on because we're anxious to get out of the present moment.
Yeah, I've noticed in today's world so many people are so wrapped up in their own little lives that the whole entire planet around them is a nuisance to them.
Yeah. Exactly. And even the people you love the most in this world, your kids, your spouse, your parents, your good friends, sometimes they're talking and you're just like, It's just like you want to get on to something else. There's not even really anything else there. You just want to get on to something else, right? It's that same sort of thing. What the Buddhists would say is that is not being present with the moment. And just being able to, take a deep breath and think, this is all there is right now in the world. This conversation right now, this person in front of me, that's what my life is now. That can change how you think about it. And some people are really lucky. They get there sooner or later in life. They get wise. And one of the things that I believe that Buddhism can teach you is to get this kind of patience with what's happening now and stay with it.
Well, I know that a lot of the old ancient teachings of the East, the Far East, even the Near East, they tell us that we are all interconnected, whether it be to trees, to humans, to insects, to animals. There's all a connection throughout all of creation with everything. Yeah,
that's true. And Buddhists in particular follow this old theory of belief that when you die, you just get reborn again. Now, coming from a Christian background, to me, getting reborn was something that happened in heaven. But this idea that you get reborn again and again and again, and it's back here on Earth, although I don't actually believe it as a practical thing, I think as a religious teaching, it's kind of nice because it means every living thing around you is related to you. It was your mother in some past lifetime, or your father in some past lifetime, your son, your friend, everybody you know has been related to you through these infinite rebirths, and that actually makes you feel really connected to everything. Now, I really just think that's a story. I think it's a great story, like, a lot of Bible stories to me are great stories, but it's a story that can help you feel better connected to every living thing that is around you.
Well, how long were you in the monastery?
Well, I was there for about 3 months altogether. But the interesting thing is, to me, it felt like a lifetime. I mean, I ended up coming out of it really a different person in a lot of ways. And I spent another long period of time in a different monastery too. So between those two, which were several months, I felt that I got a really good understanding of what life was like for somebody who chose to be a Buddhist and who chose to really practice that pathway. And even though today I don't call myself a Buddhist, I do call myself someone who's had a lot of good Buddhism rubbed off on them from those who are serious and lifetime practitioners. And it taught me a lot of things about my own life, including making me humble, making me realize there's a lot I can learn from people very different from me.
Yeah, I think some of the best parents in the world are the ones that are able to learn from their children.
Yep, that is true. That is certainly true. I'm very fortunate that I have had a son as well, and being a parent was a great and a challenging experience. Maybe more challenging than living in a monastery.
I got 3 boys, all over age 19, and the 2 23-year-olds are getting ready to move out in the next couple of weeks, and the 19-year-olds are going to be here at home. They're getting ready to sprout their wings.
There you go. That's a wonderful time. It's a wonderful thing when young people get the urge to make their own life out of their life, and you can only just sort of really let them go and enjoy sending them on their way.
Now, I was going to ask you a couple more questions.
Yeah.
Well, actually a lot more than a couple, but these two are up front and been on my mind for a few minutes now. One of them being, did you come out of the monastery and go back into Christianity?
No, I didn't. From that monastery, I ended up going to China, and I spent a year in China, and there I decided that I would see if I could find a job as a teacher and sort of give back from some of the amazing things that I'd learned in traveling in Asia. So I stayed for a year and I taught English, and then I moved to Japan for a couple of years, and by that time I'd been living for 5 years in Buddhist company. And again, although you couldn't say that I became a Buddhist, you could sure say that I didn't really become recognizable as a Christian either, even though I still believed in a certain form of Christianity, and I came to see really that any system of belief, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, is a collection of stories that helps you make sense of the world, and they're stories that have been passed down for hundreds, sometimes thousands of years, that contain a lot of wisdom. But I really felt whatever stories I believed in weren't the right stories. They're just the stories that I grew up with. And to me, that's the essence of tolerance. It's being able to appreciate that other people's religions are the stories they grew up with and the stories that helped shape them and shape their view of the world. And that's helped me now that I'm, an old guy in my mid-50s, has helped me really, look at everybody's journey as their own story. Where they find truth, that's the truths that have really spoken to them. And I don't so much differentiate as to who's got which religion or which religion is, right or wrong or truer or falser. They're the stories that help us through life. And if we're lucky, we don't get stuck in just one set of stories and we become incapable of learning. If we're lucky, we keep learning and we keep taking into us new stories that make us hopefully a little wiser.
Well, I tell you, I'm 54, going to be 55 in August. Used to teach Sunday school in a Pentecostal church.
Oh, yeah?
My dad was a preacher in the Pentecostal church. Actually, he was an evangelist.
Really?
Yeah, at any rate, I'm kind of broken away from religion, and I'm more of a pro-God but anti-religion type myself.
I can't tell you how much I hear your voice. And, the difference between, following a spiritual path and following a religion is the religion tends to be the form, right? The church you go to, the hymns you sing, the Bible you read, the creed you say. And that form itself isn't something that nourishes the spirit. And you see the form all over the world. But when you've got people whose spirit is being nourished, they can, in a sense, they can suck that nourishment from almost any religion if it's their spirit that they're nourishing. What is it that fills the form? What is it that they're in touch with and in tune with when they're saying the creed or singing their hymns? And I tell you, I didn't start out that way, but I learned it in my travels. I learned to really see it in Buddhists, in Muslims, in Hindus. I could really see the people whose lives were transformed and their faith helped them transform it. And I should tell you, I actually was a member of a Pentecostal church for about 4 years. Like we're talking the whole 9 yards, speaking in tongues, born in the Spirit, evangelical. I was really in that space. And I've also moved away from it. I still have a lot of gratitude for what I learned when I was there, but it wasn't to me a final place. Because my spirit stayed hungry.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I noticed about Christianity and being in the church was they seemed to be minus spirituality in their teaching and the way they did everything. It's like they read scriptures on spiritual teachings, but there was no depth in what they were saying. It was like they were just reading words and not understanding what they were reading, or telling you words and not understanding what they meant when they told you.
Yeah, I actually found exactly that same attitude in places in this monastery in Thailand, where, we'd be doing these chants. The chants were in a foreign language. In this case, it was Pali. The monks, some of them would be more interested in following the rules than in looking into the spirit behind the rules. I found that really frustrating. What I found was the same sort of religious dogmatism, religious adherence to the structure was over there in the monasteries and jungles of Thailand. Just as much it was any place in North America. That it's not like there's one religion that has this beautiful, clear, free path to enlightenment or to contact with God. Almost every religion has structures that inside of that are not living in themselves. It's up to each of us to find, where the life is, where the spirit is, inside whatever religion or lack of religion that we follow. I mean, you see some people that leave the church, but are they still actually pursuing the need for spiritual nourishment? it's easy to be disillusioned. It's harder to look hard and find something that keeps you nourished.
That is definitely true, especially in today's world of distraction.
Yeah, absolutely. And distraction is probably, when people look back about hundreds of years from now, they won't call our era the era of technological breakthrough. They'll call it the era of distraction. The era where people were so busy looking at their smartphones, they didn't watch where they were going when they walked across the street, right?
Yeah. They have to actually put commercials up to tell you not to text while you drive.
Exactly. People need to be told not to do something as stupid as texting while you drive. We've just gotten so distracted, and the irony is we're trying to be connected all the time through the internet. But as a result, we end up being disconnected from ourselves and from the world around us.
Yeah, this is true, but you know what? For me, it actually shows that there's an actual starvation or a hunger out there to be connected.
Yes, I agree. I really agree.
And that in itself is a path towards spirituality, perhaps a long way around, but it's a link to me, in other words.
Yes. No, I really hear you on that, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are perking up their ears too on that. But there's something in us that really wants this deep connection with our own lives. And in a sense, what the internet offers us is this surface connection that can keep us fascinating, can keep us entertained, can keep us chatty, but doesn't really satisfy that hunger for deep connection.
Now, there was another question I meant to ask you, and I want to get to it before I forget. We were talking about the guy in the outhouse earlier. Is it safe to assume, though, that as soon as he saw the snake, before he calmed down and quietly got out of there, that he completed his business when he saw the snake?
As I recall the story, no, he totally interrupted his business when he saw the snake.
No, I just had to ask because there was a day that we had went to church when I was still teaching Sunday school that we decided to stop by GameStop and check out some of their video games, and my kids had to go to the bathroom. The nearest one was at the end of the strip center at the Subway, and we went in there and we'd taken care of our business, and me, Josh, and John had left, and Royce was still in there because he was doing the same thing your buddy was doing. And it was taking him a little longer. And we were standing outside the bathroom door just waiting for him. And then a little demon come over me, and I looked at that door and I slapped it. And Roy screamed. And I said, "The hell are you going to be?" He says, "I just finished."
I'm sure if you'd had a cobra, you could have put that to good use too, to carry him along.
But I don't know. I just felt it necessary to share that one. I gotta ask you.
It's a good parenting moment for you, Royce.
Well, I got a little bit of a devilish sense of humor. It must be the redneck in me.
I guess so.
But what I gotta ask you is, are there any of these other kind of anecdotes in the book that you got out?
Yeah. Well, actually, I'll tell you one. Since you just told a slightly embarrassing story, I'll tell you one. I arrived at the same time as another guy whose name was Jim, and both of us, when we had been ordained as like sort of trial monks, you could say, we had a great deal of difficulty with the stuffiness of some of the people higher up in the hierarchy. The senior monks who've been there for 10, 15 years. And we thought, they keep telling us to be calm and stay present and not get irritated and upset. But, we said, it's really not that hard here in a monastery where everything's provided for you and everything's peaceful and quiet. But how would they really handle it if something was really upsetting? And we actually devised a plan. Now, I'll tell you right now, we didn't follow through on this. But we were thinking, what would it be like if we played the old bucket of water on the top of the door trick? Right, and we set something like that up for one of the senior monks. So when he came out of the washroom, he'd get a bucket of cold water slushing down on top of his head. Then we'd really see whether or not he could stay cool and calm and not be upset. So we didn't do that. But
I think
something happened. Yeah, well, you know,
If it was me, I would have. I'm serious.
I hear you, and I can only tell you that I was really tempted at times. I was really tempted. But I did something by accident that was even worse. And I'll tell you what I did. There was a big festival at our monastery one day, and about 150 villagers came. There was a high monk who came from another temple there, and it was a big deal. And I was actually going to leave the monastery fairly soon to there, and I actually wanted to take some pictures of this great big ceremony. So I asked the abbot if I could take my camera and take some pictures of this great big ceremony that was going on at breakfast time. And so I was there with my camera, and I was taking pictures from all sorts of angles. I was even allowed to go up to the front of the temple and get a picture of sort of everybody and all the food and all this beautiful gorgeousness, really pretty lavish in a monastery. And I was trying to get the right angle, so I was leaning down and squatting with my legs apart and taking the pictures. And I noticed that some of the villagers were noticing me, and they were looking at me, and they were laughing at me, and I thought, well, I'm taking pictures with my camera, and maybe that's a little inappropriate. So, you know, that's just what happened. So then I went back towards my seat, and on my way back to my seat, one of the senior monks said to me, "When you sit down, watch how you sit." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, everything was showing." Now, at this point, I should say monks don't wear any underwear. And what I realized is I was wearing my monk's robe, and when I was squatting down, I was doing a full Monty to everybody assembled to this big religious ceremony.
So did anybody inform you that their ceremony was not about phallic worship?
Well, I was of course mortified when this monk told me this, and I realized, oh my God, what have I done? I felt just humiliated, and I was afraid that the head monks were going to discipline me or chastise me or punish me in some way for really being, you know, creating such a bad impression here at their celebration. But that didn't happen. Instead, what happened is the number 2 monk came over to me later that morning, and he said, "You know, Tim, when a monk kneels and when a monk sits, there's a certain way of doing it that shows grace and self-awareness, and this is the way you do it." And he demonstrated for me how to properly sit and how to properly kneel, and he never mentioned what happened to me a little earlier, the embarrassment that I caused. He just sort of walked me through what you're supposed to do to make sure that you know, don't show anybody anything they're not supposed to see. And when he left me, I thought, dang, this is just like one of those monks, as if I'd splashed him with a face full of water, just wiping the water off and saying, you know, that's probably not the way to do it. If you want to help somebody wash their face, you should do it like this. He was just really calm, really gentle with me, not at all disapproving. And I thought, okay, that's a good point. They made a good point, those senior people in the hierarchy, by not just getting pissed at me.
So you kind of began to regret your little moment of mischievous reverie.
I did, although my friend Jim always thought that it would have been a great idea to do that.
Yeah, I still think so. I mean, just for the fun of it, but I guess it does kind of show that they probably wouldn't have got too excited. Well,
I don't know. That still has to remain an open question from this book. I certainly did, you know, get to know some of these monks really well. These guys who had left the world of North America, the busy life, and they dedicated themselves for a long time to this very simple, peaceful life. And one of them, Royce, I got to tell you, was a hilarious character. He actually was a former Chicago real estate tycoon and millionaire. And he one day just got fed up with it all, and he literally gave everything he had away, and he went to Thailand, and he ended up joining this monastery. But every now and then he'd start saying, you know, yeah, today I only own 3 robes, and I live in a hut that's 9 feet by 9 feet wide, but I used to have several cars and a wife and a girlfriend and mistresses, and, you know, he'd talk about this great big empire that he that he had that he gave it all up to go and live this simple life.
Maybe he should have sold everything, put the money in the bank so he could go back and get it when he wanted it.
Yes, but he didn't. This is commitment, right? He really, truly left it all behind.
Wow.
And leaving it all behind. That's one of the themes of this book.
Okay. Now, what would be, say, like any kind of purpose you might have in the book or any hopes you have for the book?
Sorry, purpose or hopes? It was pretty clear for me when I wrote it. The main thing is, to me, it was an incredible experience living in this completely other kind of culture. I really wanted to share that experience. First, I wanted to share it with my friends and family, and then I just wanted to share it with other people in North America who, they're probably not going to go and live in a Buddhist monastery in Thailand, but I wanted to write this book so that they would have the experience of really getting what that was like, including the feeling of living in a jungle with dangerous creatures, including the feeling of living a life where you're not supposed to watch TV or listen to radio or even read books, but just live simply in the present moment. It's so foreign for what we live in, Reese. So I really wanted to give people what that sense was. And then I also wanted to make sure that I could do that in such a way that people got a gist, a general sense of like Buddhism 101. What are the core things about Buddhism that make it an interesting religion? And one of the things that to me is delightful about this book is a good number of universities and colleges actually picked it up, and they actually have the students read it for the Introduction to Buddhism course, because it gives you a really great beginner's look about what is this thing called Buddhism. It does that job really well. So those were, to me, my two main purposes in this book, and I'm really glad that they were accomplished. And the book's been in print now for over 20 years, and I couldn't ask for more.
Well, I know for many years there's been a pretty big Buddhist movement here in America, but it's like a totally different animal than what you'd find in Asia or Thailand or somewhere.
Well, that's a really great question. I remember seeing, just like last month on Facebook, a map of the United States that showed the second most popular religion in each state. And interestingly enough, in just about every state from the Rocky Mountains to the west, Buddhism shows up as the second most popular religion after Christianity. The exceptions being Utah, where it's actually Christianity. I think that's the second most popular after Mormonism. And I think Arizona, where Hinduism is the second most popular religion, thanks to a good number of Indians who live there. So Buddhism is hugely popular in the west part of the country. It really amazes me how many people are interested in this as a way of being, and who want to know, well, what does it mean to meditate? What is it? What's different about this as a way of practicing your spirituality? So a huge hunger for this, for knowledge about this religion in our country. And interestingly enough, Buddhism has always exported itself to other countries. It came originally from India and Nepal, but it's practiced in Thailand, it's practiced in Vietnam, it's practiced in Sri Lanka, and now it's practiced in surprising numbers in North America and in Europe.
Yeah, I know that roughly sometime back in the 70s, it was not that popular here in America, and a lot of your conservatives, just as it was getting its feet off the ground over here good, were running it in the ground and poking fun of their haircuts and the robes they wore out in public, and generally trying to discredit them and make them undesirable to people of the church, I guess, for fear they'd leave and go over there if they didn't, in other words. And then up in the 80s, it started getting a little bit more popular, and then today it's pretty much where we see it at now, of course.
Yep, that's right. Today, it's not that uncommon to find people who are either practicing Buddhists or just as common people who meditate and draw their inspiration on how to meditate from Buddhist sources. I mean, one of the things that I think has been really interesting about Buddhism as it's come to the West is it has not come as a dogmatic religion that you need to believe. It's come as a technique for getting grounded in your own life, for reducing stress, for finding ways to be deeply connected. So it's really the techniques of Buddhism: meditation, peacefulness, acceptance of others. It's really been the principles of the religion as opposed to the dogma that has caught on. And you gotta really appreciate Buddhism can be as dogmatic as the most fundamentalist sect in Christianity. And indeed, one of the things that to me was quite funny is after my book was published, when I went back to Thailand a number of years later, I found that a lot of Buddhists thought that this was a really bad book. This was really like a heretical book because it made fun of some monks, because it didn't take religiously and seriously some of the things that the Buddhist community was trying to dictate to others. So I found myself really chagrined to see that my book was kind of blacklisted amongst some in the Buddhist community. Now, a lot of other people really loved this book, no doubt about it. But for some, it was a really bad book because it made fun of our religion. And,
so you got your stick in the muds in every religion.
Absolutely so. Absolutely so. And in fact, today, one of the really tragic things that you see in countries like Burma and Sri Lanka is you see religious intolerance being spread by some Buddhist teachers. You see some Buddhist monks who are preaching hatred against Muslims in both Sri Lanka and in Burma. And that, any sort of preaching of intolerance of those people over there, they're not good. We people over here, we're good. That's just the dead opposite of what the Buddha taught, just as it's the opposite of what Jesus taught.
Okay. Now, we're getting down to about roughly 20 minutes left. Now, I wanted you to have plenty of time, didn't want it to run out on you, to tell us about some of your other books.
Oh, sure. I'm glad to. That was my very first book, What the Buddha Never Taught, and still in print. I then wrote 2 more books about my travels through Asia. And after that, I wrote a couple of other books, and I'd love to tell your listeners a little bit about my most recent book, which has this great title. It's called Zombies on Kilimanjaro. I know it sounds like sort of an old horror movie, but the book was really about a climb that I made of Mount Kilimanjaro, the largest mountain in Africa, with my son, who at the time I wrote the book was 20 years old. And it's really a book about fathers and sons and, what's the path we have into the future, especially at that difficult point in life that, Royce, you're right at right now, where your sons are letting go and they're starting their own life. And how do we as parents allow them to go peacefully for them and also peacefully in our own heart? So this is, to me, one of the most fun books that I've ever written. It was all about the climb. It started day one, and it takes you through everything that's exotic and beautiful about this wild, natural part of the world, Mount Kilimanjaro, and goes through our conversations along the way about fathers, sons, our past together, our future together, and I just really enjoyed having the experience and then writing about it.
Sounds fun.
It sure was. It was also really interesting to do this with my son because, I came back from the mountain with all kinds of notes, and while I was writing different chapters from my notes, I'd send them on to him and say, so what do you think about this? And he'd say, well, Dad, that's really accurate. You really caught, just what I said, just what you said. And then other parts he'd say, I don't remember that at all. I think you're just making that up. So he was a great corrector and collaborator, literally, as I was taking the story and turning it into a work of literary nonfiction.
Sounds like you're talking about the big payoff for a parent, well, at least partly, when the parent gets to be in his 50s to 60s and the child's in his 20s to 30s, and they got a good, tight, ongoing rapport with each other. And I mean, because in so many families, the minute a child gets grown, they can't wait to get out, and they don't want to have nothing to do with their parents. They had a big blow up, and a lot of times they go off on a wrong road that ends up in sorrow. And So, if you got a case like you're describing where your child is in their 20s or whatever, and you're still talking and visiting and sharing, well, that sounds like a big payoff to me.
Well, thank you, Royce. And actually, my son and I did have a big blow up. He, in his senior year of high school, he and I were fighting about homework, and his mom and I were divorced. He went back and forth between our two houses, and I just really pissed him off so badly at one point that he said, "I don't have to put up with this crap." And he left, and I didn't see him for 6 months. He wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't return emails or phone calls, and I was really heartbroken. So this climb we did up Kilimanjaro was about a year, maybe 2 years after that, and a lot of it was really a big healing for the two of us, because he'd really had left a mark on the relationship, and it was not a real pleasant one. So this long time together, sort of trapped on a mountain, helped us really work through some stuff and start, for me, to really see him as an independent person, and for him to see me as something other than,
a father,
sort of a father, right? And so we talked about and we thought about some of those like great archetypes. Like my favorite one is Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, right? There's a real sense in which you need to fight the father. You need to say, "I'm not you. I'm not like you, evil Lord of the universe."
So this sounds like it was about comparing him or holding up to expectations, maybe, or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a common one. I think a lot of times parents, in their desire for their kids to do so well, kind of raise their expectations a little too high sometimes. And even I've had a few scuttles with my kids about, well, you're asking us to do better than you did. And I'm like, yeah. Well, every parent wants their child to do better than they did and to succeed better. And they're like, what makes you think we can do any better than you did? Yeah. And I said, well, you see, it's kind of like this here. My philosophy is to shoot for the sky as high as you can get, but accept what you're dealt at the end.
Yeah.
In other words, strive for more than what you think you're going to get, but be happy and content when you get what you're able to get.
Exactly. And I just would add to that, if there's a gap between what you get and what you're shooting at, that's a good thing. It means you're shooting a little higher, you're shooting with more ambition than, what maybe you should get. And if you do that, though, that means you got room to grow into what you're achieving.
Well, yeah.
So I think that's a great way of looking at it.
I also explained to my kids, though, that it wasn't really so much the results that was the big payoff for me as it was the effort that I was getting them to put into it. And by doing it this way, I didn't have to take the pressure off to keep them trying to strive for the best.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's hard, isn't it, Royce? And now I feel like I'm interviewing you. It's hard to know what to say to kids who are in their late teens or in their 20s, because first of all, they tend to not really want to listen, and second of all, you don't actually know what it's like to be them. The world's changed. It's a different place, and for all you and I know, our greatest wisdom might be totally inappropriate in 2014.
I think our greatest wisdom will always be inappropriate to those that was our age back at their age. that 20 is when you already know the answers, and Dad is just an old timer. He's just thinking of things back 30, 40 years ago. We're in a different world. It don't apply. Dad can't seem to grasp that, and that's the way their thought process is. And then when they get in their mid 30s or 40s, they start looking back and, wow.
That old guy, he knew what he was talking about. Doesn't do him any good by then because they've made all their mistakes.
But that's been a repetitive cycle, I think, down through the millennia.
I think so.
So, now you got some other books you want to tell me about?
Yeah, sure. I have one book which to me was like probably the most challenging book that I ever wrote. And this happened after I came back from Asia and after my first marriage fell apart in a divorce. hey, you go to a Buddhist monastery, you think that's going to teach you how to be married? No, it's going to teach you how to live alone. So, my marriage just fell apart, and in the wreckage of my marriage, I had to really come to terms with my relationships with women that were not good. And one of the things that I got interested in was taking a look at, what actually went on historically between males and females. How did things start to go wrong? And I decided to look specifically at this ancient idea that in pre-Christian, pre-Jewish times, the sacred, that which was holy, was seen as both male and also as female. So there were gods and there were goddesses back at the time of the ancient Greeks and for a long, long time further. And what I wondered about was, what would it have been like to be a man living in a time when there were goddesses? And how would the presence of sacred females may be different in my attitudes towards real women? So that was the question, Royce, that set me off on a 7-year search to find the answer.
Wow.
I ended up going to Europe several times. I went to all the temples where the goddess was worshipped. I found the statues in the museums, and I stood before them, and I tried to imagine what were the makers, what were those who chiseled these statues out, what were they trying to say, what was I feeling in the presence of these icons of the sacred feminine. And what I found really blew my mind and changed everything I thought about women relationships and what it is to be sacred and what it is to be a man.
So has that helped you in your married life any?
Yeah, I can tell you really truthfully that before this journey, no relationship that I was ever in really worked out well. And the woman who I met while I was on this journey, who, man, really saw me as a bad piece of work, but she was fascinated by the search that I was on. Well, she and I have been married for 11 years, and it's really the best relationship I ever have, and it keeps getting better, and I feel like a real lucky guy. So something big changed when I was able to go back and really face, my demons and really look at this thing called women, and particularly through this lens of the sacred. Big things changed.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I got married one time in my life, and I'm still married to her.
Good for you. I hope good for you. I hope you think that you're a lucky man every day.
But I'm just saying that's a pretty rare thing, and we've been at it 27 years. That's why we got kids that are 23.
Right.
Which means we also waited 3 or 4 years to start pumping them out.
Yeah, well, that's probably a good thing too. But Royce, tell me what to you was the secret of having a love that really lasted with this woman who's your wife and mother of your kids.
I know that for many years, me and her fought tooth and nail, but we both had a set belief that love conquers all, and that we were gonna, ride the wildest storm out there. And believe me, we rode some wild ones. But then at some point, we began to learn that most of all that storm we was going through was because of us trying to change each other.
Mm-hmm.
And when we quit trying to change each other, things got a lot more peaceful and stayed that way until we started falling back into old tricks here and there, and it seems like during times when we're not trying to change each other, everything's fine. And when we are trying to, it gets a little stormy, then we quit. It goes back to peace again.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the biggest secret would be to live and let live.
Very simple to say, very difficult to practice inside a marriage, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's why we keep falling on and off the wagon, because some of those times when you're letting somebody live, they're actually making your life a little worse, and that makes it hard to let them live.
Yep. And boy, I really hear you on just exactly that point. I come to see that one of the difficulties that we as men have, and I'm just speaking as a man here, is when we get married, we tend to see the woman as somehow fulfilling our dreams, fulfilling our desires, fulfilling our expectations for what a wife and partner is going to be. And it's easy to lose sight of the actual person because we got a clear idea of the fantasy that we think we're married to. And this distance between the fantasy of someone who's there for us, in a
The Mary Poppins marriage,
serve our needs, right? Well, whether it's Mary Poppins or some sort of, erotic dancer of our imagination, whether it's domestic needs or sexual needs that they're there to serve, that's not the whole reality of the person. It might be part of the reality of the person. I mean, part of it when you love each other is you do really want to give the other person what makes them happy, but that's not your whole identity. And in marriages, we can easily lose track of the fact that that's not our whole identity, to be for the other person. We are also, each of us, our own selves. And that's what makes a marriage an interesting thing. I mean, one of the things that helps me really keep Teresa fresh in my mind is I honestly never know who she's going to show up as, right? She could be any one of half a dozen different people in the course of any day, right? Sometimes she could be, smart and sassy, and sometimes she could be loving, and sometimes she could be like all business, and sometimes she could be preoccupied about something that's bothering her. I can't expect her to just be this one person showing up all the time. She's going to be different.
Sometimes she could be trying to get Dorothy's ruby slippers.
Absolutely. I hear what you're saying when you say that. certainly.
What can I say?
Teresa's not listening as I'm talking to you here in my office. But yeah, sometimes she could be a wicked witch. But hey, sometimes I can be, I can be the big bad wolf.
I could be the world's biggest jerk.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I go out of my way to do it when I got a point to make.
Yeah. So yes, the point I think is if we can show up fresh to each other and not think, that this person is here to serve my needs, then we got a good shot at seeing them who they are. And when you see somebody for who they are in the moment, you get the chance to fall in love with them every day, in a moment here and there. And that's one of the things that I, really felt that I learned, is that I had to give up my fantasy of a woman as a goddess who was made to fill my needs, to see the real woman. Men talk about putting the women up on a pedestal, but that's a dangerous place up on a pedestal. Right? You can fall off. You can fall off real easy and hurt yourself.
Yeah. Well, not just yourself, but your view. I mean, like my wife, she made that mistake of putting me way up high on a pedestal. And then there come the day that me and her had the hugest fight. And the car kept dying at every red light. And I got mad and I jumped out and I slammed my arm through that window. And she never viewed me the same way again. I fell off that pedestal in her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a big danger in that.
Yeah. Yeah, but, frankly, we're better off pedestals, I think. Because, when somebody idealizes you, that's not the real you that they're seeing. It doesn't mean that we don't want to.
That is true. She saw what she wanted to see, that fantasy you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because women do it too, right? Women make white knights on horses out of ordinary men.
They sure do. They be wanting it so bad. Maybe that, plus they were taught by their mamas as little girls about the little own Prince Charming they'll one day meet, and then lo and behold, you become it, and then lo and behold, they find out you weren't it.
Yeah.
but that's such is the cycle of life. I would tell anybody getting married now to try going in there with reality and leave the fairy tales behind.
Yep. That's absolutely great advice. Leave the fairy tales behind. But those fairy tales, they're in our deep unconscious. They're really, they work us, those fairy tales. And they work us because we want the world to be the way we want it to be, right? We want to be loved even when we're being selfish and behaving badly. We want to be respected and admired even if we're being lazy and we're not doing our job, right? We have these unrealistic things that we deeply want, and we feel we somehow compromise with the world because the world demands something of us. So maturity for me, maybe spiritual maturity, is being able to really let go of your own fairy tales about how you want the world to be and what you think the world owes you.
Yeah, because I think living in this fairy tale about, people should think highly of me no matter how I do, well, that just has so little relation with reality. I haven't never known anybody to think highly or speak highly to anybody that didn't at least meet status quo.
Yeah.
I mean, in reality, nobody ever accepted me unless I did.
Yep.
So, yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with indoctrination when you're growing up.
Yeah, that's true. And, I think for some parents, we make it too easy on our kids. Not that anybody wants to deliberately make it hard on your kids, but if you, are just totally concerned with your kids' self-esteem, you can end up leaving them kind of weak. They think everything should come easily to them. It's, I had sort of the reverse thing. I think my parents were probably harder on me than was good for me, but that made me resilient in a certain way. I don't know, I wish resilience on anybody, but you got to find a balance somewhere so that you live in a
That's the exact same thing I was
talking about. In a real world,
to,
not in the world of your imagination.
I was talking to Karen Tate about that one day. She's into this here fem movement, women changing the world, trying to restore balance. And me and her talked in depth about this fact that we're no longer in balance. And, it's such a vital thing. If you just go too far left, too far right, everything's anarchy and chaos. So.
It's true. It's true.
At any rate, I see we're coming up on the bewitching hour here. I want to remind everybody that tomorrow I was supposed to interview Kevin Fossum about his book. I think it was Forbidden. I took them off the front page and I don't have them in front of me anymore. But it had to do with the Forbidden Truths of the Bible, I think was the title of it. But he had sent me his books and they didn't get to me in time to read them for the show. So he's asked me to reschedule that show for a time after I've read the book so I can pinpoint questions out of it. So instead, tomorrow I will be interviewing Philip Hoppersberger, about his book Exposure, and it's a novel that kind of combines a little cloak and dagger with a little religious material. Comes up with a great suspense story. I've been reading it today, and I'll be reading it a little bit tomorrow, maybe more tonight. And from what I see of it so far, it seems to be pretty much as good as Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, and very similar in some ways. So y'all may want to hear what the man has to say. That's going to be over at Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, where I'm at every Thursday from 1 p.m. Central to 3 p.m. Central, or 2 to 4 Eastern, if that's what time zone you're in. I usually post on the page what the time zones are in each area, so y'all have an easy time knowing your time zone. So, folks, please drop on over there and give me an ear. Don't forget, you can learn more about Tim by going to his website at www.timwardsbooks.com. And also, I will have a link to his site and to his book right under his description, which tomorrow or the next day will be going into the archive to make room for the next show. And it will be in the archive for posterity. There will be a copy at YouTube, and there will be a half a show copy at Daily Motion, so anybody anywhere can listen in and hear what we've done tonight. Did you have any last minute thoughts you'd like to throw in there, Tim?
I'd just like to say, Royce, I wish your listeners to have a life filled with curiosity and grace, that they really get how lucky they are to live in this country, how lucky they are to be curious, intelligent, aware individuals, and that life is just a mystery to live deeply and richly. And any of them who visit my website and find my email, I'd be happy to hear from you. It's just been a real pleasure to be on your show, where one can explore and listen to these great open discussions and ideas. Royce, what a great show you got.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Tim. And you got an open door. You ever want to come back? I'm pretty sure you'll be writing more books. Don't be bashful. Stay in touch.
Okay, absolutely, Royce. I'd be happy to be back again on your show. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go spend some time with my family on that note. And guys, thank you for listening. I couldn't have a show without my listeners any more than I could have one without a guest. So if you listened, you participated, and I appreciated it. Talk to you at the next show. Hope to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.